Hey folks, much like the rest of the video, let's make this intro mini. This is a collection of 5 different Kingdom Hearts rankings that I don't think are substantial enough to have their own dedicated videos. But I thought it'd be a shame to never talk about these topics for an extended amount of time at all, hence this hodgepodge 5 rankings for the price of 1 format. Let me know what you think of this style. It's definitely something a bit different, but you're gonna get a little bit of everything with this one, I think. With only a little bit further ado, let's get to our first ranking of the day. We're gonna kick things off by going back to our roots. Remember keyholes? I mean, it's not like they've been entirely absent from the series since the first game, but that was certainly the first and last time any of us gave a shit about them. Kingdom Hearts 1 introduced this idea that every world has this special location with a keyhole to that world's heart. Thus, to protect each world's heart from the threat of the Heartless, these keyholes needed to be sealed by Sora. A simple but elegant idea, and to the series' credit, I'm impressed that they didn't lean on this concept to help structure the rest of the game's worlds, because it would have been really easy. But given that we return to some worlds that we already sealed the keyhole for in KH1, it'd be kinda boring to just do it again in a place like Agrabah or Halloween Town. So they mix things up as the series progresses, giving us different quote-unquote finale triggers at the end of each world we visit. Or in the case of Dream Drop, they outright return to doing keyholes again, except I would have absolutely forgotten this had I not been reading about keyholes for this video. Except those keyholes were sleeping, a fantastic and apt modifier because these ones are boring as sin, and I'm not talking about Beefcake Satan and Symphony of Sorcery. Dream Drop keyholes are essentially just the same PNG that shows up twice per world in seemingly arbitrary locations for both characters. The sleeping keyholes are these intangible, temporary things that are more often than not reacting to a boss dying, rather than being a constant fixture in a place of sentimental value or importance in each world. They're the same thing every time. So let's go back to the good times, the glory days of keyholes. Maybe referring to keyholes with the word glory isn't the best turn of phrase. Anyway, number 11 is the Olympus Coliseum keyhole. And honestly, it's not terrible, and I can see anyone saying this is actually one of the best. It's right under your nose the whole time, and it's only after clearing the first 3 cups that you finally unlock the ability to do Yellow Trinities and move the block. And it's easy to forget, but Phil literally asks you to try and push this thing the minute you first arrive. So it's excellent bookends to kick the shit out of Greece's favorite barrel phobe and finally shove this pedestal into oblivion. Into Olympia. So points for all the growth arc and power scaling stuff, but also, this is just a hole in the floor, in the least interesting room in the world. Granted, there's only 3 rooms, but who looked at the giant golden warriors at the gates and said, fuck it, put the heart of the world in the lobby, like the room where you wait for stuff. There's no real bells or whistles or special effects, it's just sorta there, like it would have been sitting there nakedly unless someone purposefully put a big pedestal on top of it just to be a dick. So in short, fantastic process and growth indicator, but overall trash hole. Also, I never noticed this, but the cutscene starts with the entire trio pushing the block, but then it cuts to just Sora, so was this a team effort or not? Points off for muddy branding. At number 10 is the Atlantica keyhole in Ariel's Grotto. I always thought it was kinda weird how you beat Giant Ursula and then get plopped into King Triton's throne room, and then they make you swim over to the grotto yourself. Like, Jesus Crustacean, the least you could do is summon that dolphin chariot thing to give me a ride. Do I have to do everything around here? I wouldn't say this is a bad hole, but it's one of the least memorable for me. It's at least got a little bit of intrigue, given that you will very obviously know that this is the site of the keyhole upon first entry into this room, which happens pretty early on in the world. The location is vastly superior to Olympus's. Ariel is the emotional core of the world, and the grotto is the place that means the most to her, so you can't argue with this hole being in the wrong place. I also like how it can be opened by her dad's trident, but also a knockoff copy of it that someone 3D printed and then put in the sunken ship for some reason. And by I like that, I actually mean that it's kind of dumb, but it's alright. Unfortunately, there's like no pizzazz whatsoever to the ceiling itself. The trident gets slotted in, for some reason this rock slab starts glowing and expelling bubbles, and then the keyhole just sorta appears on a sheet of floating glass. It's a bit Dream Droppian in that way, and that DD depresses me. For number 9, maybe controversially, is the Traverse Town keyhole. I love Traverse Town, it's like my number 2 favorite world in the series, but I don't know, the fountain thing here never did much for me. It's pretty, the multiple murals thing is kinda cool, but that's all it really is. Canonically, you'd be sealing this one after already having sealed Wonderland and Deep Jungle, so there isn't really any juice here for it being the first or anything like that. I do appreciate how in its 9-year existence, Traverse Town has developed folklore surrounding ringing the Gizmo Shop bell. Like, how is this a rumor? Who told you guys about this? Nobody explicitly states that ringing the bell 3 times reveals the keyhole, they're just like, hey, something might happen if you do that. This feels conspiratorial. But despite Traverse Town being a very special world to me, its hole just doesn't have that same luster. I think by virtue of this being a refugee planet that just formed in response to the needs of displaced people, it's difficult for there to be this established place of meaning and importance in this world because nobody is even from here. So they just put the keyhole in this random fountain mural. I don't get the impression that the fountain, or really the second district in general, holds any sentimental value to anyone currently living here, but I also don't know where the hell else you put it. Maybe somewhere in the Dalmatians' house? It's much more representative of Traverse Town's role as a safe haven, and maybe the keyhole could just be optional and the Dalmatians show you where it is after rescuing all the puppies. Or if it feels too unforgiving to lock it behind all 99 puppies, maybe you find like half of them and Pongo and Perdita are like, yeah, that's good enough. So I'm kind of breaking some of my own rules here at number 8 because the Halloween Town keyhole is literally just a gigantic hole in the floor. It's Olympus Coliseum's, but this time it's big. However, and I cannot stress this enough, you shoot the fucking moon for this one. Dr. Eggman would be so proud. Admittedly, it's kind of weird that the heart of the world is hidden underneath the private property of the boogeyman, like maybe Moonlight Hill would have been a more neutral location. Or maybe Oogie built his manor on top of a monster orphanage that he burned down. We can't say for sure, but we will say that to justify this placement outside of the fact that you shoot the fucking moon, which frankly is enough to carry it to 8th place alone, and I shouldn't have to defend that. Bit of a weird one at number 7, but I'm going with the Destiny Islands keyhole. I honestly nearly forgot about it by virtue of us never actually sealing it and hardly even seeing it as a keyhole. But it's basically the catalyst for the story, and I really like this story, so thanks, wooden plank in a cave. And that sells it a bit short, because I could think of no better place to put the keyhole than the area on the island that holds the most emotional significance to Sora, Riku, and Kairi. And not the Final Fantasy kids, because they're either not allowed in here or still haven't mustered up the pretty stones to explore it.
Me and Titus?
It is a bit weird though, it kind of just looks like someone bought some wood from Lowe's or Home Depot Keeper and sort of just propped it up at the back of this cave. Like, it's not giving here from the dawn of this world's existence in the way that many other holes do. Which, I suppose there's one other keyhole that kind of fits that bill, but it has a bit more grandiosity to it than this one. Given the odd nature of this hole, I feel like I've got this one either too low or too high, but it would be truly insane for anyone to really care too much about the order that I have these things in. Alright, number 6, back to a more conventional hole, it's the Wonderland doorknob. This is the campiest that keyholes get, and I've been criticized for not appreciating camp enough in the past, so consider this a show of goodwill to the camping community. It's a shame, this is canonically the first keyhole we seal, so it got me hyped that we'd be clumsily shooting a big beam of energy into the mouths of several other living organisms throughout the game. But no, just the doorknob, because he's a freak like that. They're also looking like right down his throat, this feels super invasive. I wonder if this key beam hurt him, or if it just felt like when you drink cold water right after chewing some minty gum. Do you think he knows his uvula is the protector of the heart of the world? Oh, so it's a girl doorknob. Did he sign up for this, or was he born with it? It's such a burdensome responsibility to potentially be harassed by exercise balls with heart disease and Jolly Rancher degenerates while you're trying to sleep. But heavy hangs the door that hosts the knob hole, as Lewis Carroll once said. This is my job. Alright, finally, we've reached the top 5 holes. Fittingly, it's the keyhole sealed right after Wonderlands, or right before it if you're naughty, the Deep Jungle keyhole. This was the first one that imparted any degree of wow factor when initially encountering it, because the location is top tier. Like, I appreciate the doorknob, but it isn't exactly an emotional core of Alice in Wonderland. He's probably like the 9th or 10th character from the movie that you'd think of. In fairness, there aren't exactly a ton of heartfelt moments or cornerstones of sentimentality in the 75-minute ayahuasca trip that is Alice in Wonderland. But the Cavern of Heart is something special. This is where Kala would sing Phil Collins to Tarzan when he was feeling inadequate. The atmosphere here is just off the charts, and it's also the site of Sora and Donald's reconciliation, so I just find the whole area really memorable. Although, considering you can very realistically do Deep Jungle before Wonderland, it's weird that Sora seals this one like a seasoned pro regardless of the order you do the worlds in. It's actually quite un-KH1-like, because this game has alternate scenes for things like playing through Monstro after Hollow Bastion, or, in literally the same world order scenario, seeing Snow White instead of Alice in the Castle Chapel if you do Deep Jungle first. You'd figure there'd be an alternate version of both of the first keyhole scenes, one where Sora's surprised by the Keyblade sealing it for him, and one where he knows what he's doing. For our number 4 hole, we're going to Neverland, although not really because we're going to London.
Gaming.
I know this is in 4th place, but if we're grading purely on location, it's hard to beat Big Ben. It makes you wonder what other video game plot devices are being hidden by the likes of a Statue of Liberty or Taj Mahal. I almost wonder if they added the clock tower specifically because it would have been truly underwhelming for the keyhole to be anywhere aboard the Jolly Roger. Honestly, they should have gone the doorknob route and put it in the crocodile's mouth. As an aside, I think if the keyhole were actually in Neverland proper, it'd probably be at Mermaid Lagoon or Hangman's Tree. Well, maybe not the latter. I don't think Cubby should be allowed anywhere remotely near the heart of the world. This hole also gets points for having a little puzzle that precedes the actual sealing cutscene. Interacting with the environment is how you get to the heart of my world, which I guess is my literal heart. Also, do any of you numerology freaks in the Cage community know why the keyhole appears between 2 and 3 on the clock face? I'm gonna say it's because the next time Sora interacts with keyholes on a regular basis is in Dream Drop Distance, which is between KH2 and KH3. I'll take your like and subscribe now, thanks. For our third place hole, it doesn't get much more charming than the 100 Acre Woods. Because the wood hole isn't in the actual world, but on the mechanism that protects the physical object that is the Winnie the Pooh book. It's just clever as fuck, and KH1 never slacks or forgets how the 100 Acre Wood is this special case, a world within a world. We get the book repaired in the quote-unquote real world, we find its missing pages scattered throughout other worlds, and we seal the keyhole on the actual book clasp after leaving the world and reuniting Pooh with all his friends. It's also unique in that we don't see Sora actually seal it, he just sorta apparates out of the book by becoming a shooting star thing, and then the book gets locked through the power of warm fuzzy feelings. Which, yeah, I guess that lock didn't do shit when the soldiers came to town in KH2. Another fun fact, the 100 Acre Wood keyhole gets its own special sealing music. Every other hole has that little tune called Turning the Key, whereas this one gets the track called Once Upon a Time, which is a music box arrangement of the Winnie the Pooh theme song. Speaking of turning the key though, it's only ever used in KH1 until they bring it back for a gag in KH3 when Sora locks Randall away in Monstropolis. Which, I'm assuming that wasn't the Monstropolis keyhole, I think this was just Sora being fancy. The order for the top 2 holes might be a bit surprising, but taking a silver medal for me personally is the final keyhole in Hollow Bastion. I mean, its branding is really strong, it has its own name, the final keyhole. And while it is the final keyhole in the game, although you could feasibly seal 3 other keyholes after this one, it's actually not the only keyhole in Hollow Bastion. Which I guess takes some finality out of its sails considering it has a sibling elsewhere in the world. It's really easy to miss because it's never actually seen, and honestly it's not even all that important, but according to Ansem's report, the actual keyhole to the heart of Hollow Bastion is in the castle basement. The final keyhole is something close to an artificial construction, and it's more so concerned with opening the door to darkness by using the 7 princesses, not so much with guarding Hollow Bastion's heart. Although, maybe it also does that, since Sora seals it in very much the same fashion that he deals with all the other keyholes. But really, the final keyhole is only here because this is where Maleficent set up shop. It could have been anywhere else that she decided to call her home base. So all of those lore caveats and implications aside, the final keyhole is just, once again, crushing it in the atmosphere department. It's a good thing Maleficent did make Hollow Bastion her base of operations, because that means the final keyhole gets this fucked up eldritch pipe organ look. Not to mention it's radiating this evil, melted tie-dye juice, and you can even walk around inside it if you don't mind the gigantic locals. The whole room is just quintessential KH1 weirdness. And perhaps surprisingly, the best hole in the game goes to Agrabah. And there's probably nothing else in any iteration of Agrabah that I'd award the title of best to, unless it's best at pissing me off, in which case it's a shoo-in for Genie Jafar. But this keyhole simply hits different for me. While it's really just Jafar and Ursula actively trying to access the keyhole to their own worlds, Jafar gets way closer to achieving that. The guy's got Homer Simpson as his slave, and he cashes 2 wishes on finding the hole and becoming a big buff demigod creature right next to the hole. If he had just 1 more wish left, maybe he could have wished for Iago to fly just a little bit higher. Point being, this is one of the few times in the game where it feels like you're not only in a race to the keyhole, but the villain is way closer to winning than you are. The stage is set for what may have been the Disc 1 final boss if Kingdom Hearts were a PS1 game, and the feeling of anticipation and momentum is only bolstered by Maleficent first appearing to Sora here before peacing out, plus Jasmine getting kidnapped during the Genie Jafar fight. Aladdin is grief-stricken in the background, and Sora's like, hey man, I get it and all, but I really need to focus on this. This thing takes like 2 hours to recharge if I miss. It's hard to think of a better place to set the keyhole in Agrabah than the lamp chamber. I mean, I think the only other candidates are the palace and Aladdin's house, but this room has a real sense of antiquity and grandiosity to it. And to top it off, I think this hole has the best actual ceiling cutscene, and it's not even close. The swirls, the big curtain of gold, the fact that this cues us up for a big escape sequence on the carpet, it's chef's kiss. Although, I wouldn't kiss him if I were you, he carries plague. So that was nice, right? Even the lower entries in that ranking felt at least somewhat consequential. As I mentioned up top, the series strayed away from these more plot-central and tangible keyholes, instead favoring different end-of-level staples, like unlocking the gates in KH2, sealing those aforementioned boring sleeping keyholes in Dream Drop, or failing to trigger the power of waking in KH3. I want to take a look at the immediate successor to KH1's keyholes, which I'm going to call the KH2 Gate Objects, which isn't like a thrilling sounding name, but the game never really gives us a unifying term for all of these things. And by these things, I mean the objects at the end of most of your first visits in Cage 2 worlds that start glowing and allow Sora to unseal the gates between worlds so he can continue on his journey. This concept is not necessarily worse than sealing the keyholes, but I do find it a lot less exciting, and I swear I'm not just saying that to be the KH1 glazer that I often am. Getting to see where each world's keyhole is was always just kind of fun, though I do get why they did away with it to keep things fresh and avoid the plot contrivance of having to reseal keyholes, especially in returning worlds. So in Cage 2, Sora's Keyblade reacts to specific items, often ones of some degree of significance, although notably not always, and this unseals the gate. In Cage 3, though, he unseals the gate to Olympus without any help from a magical object, so I don't know, the whole thing is a little inconsistent. If it wasn't clear yet, I'm gonna rank these gate objects, and this one will be a bit brisker because there's truly not much to dig into for some of them, but I've got ones I would like to praise and others I would love to lambast. A fun game for you to play at home is to pause for a bit and see if you can remember the special object for each world, because unless you're truly two-pilled, I can almost guarantee you cannot. And to save you all some brain pain, Timeless River, Space Paranoids, and 100 Acre Wood don't have objects due to their special natures, and nothing for the world it never was because there's no more gates that need unsealing by that point. So in 12th and last place is Atlantica's, and I'm not just being 2006 about it because Atlantica is cringe and bad, but because this object fucking blows. As in, it blows bubbles, because that's what we're working with here. A bubble. I was talking about the gate objects on Twitch, and someone told me Atlantica's was a bubble, and I thought they were trolling me. I understand that we're under the sea and we don't have the absolute most to work with, but like, a bubble? The most impermanent, inconsequential thing anyone could ever think of? For a replacement, I was going to suggest the necklace that held Ariel's voice, but Sora destroyed that. I was then going to suggest the Eric statue in Ariel's grotto, but Triton destroyed that. Okay, in fairness, they were just shooting beams at any item of importance in this world, so I'll cut the devs some slack. But surely there could have been something else. Maybe an instrument used in A New Day is Dawning, or Sebastian's conductor stick, or the sheet music. Even using the Triton again would have been better. Hell, literally a clam or a piece of coral would have been better than a fucking bubble. What shit is there for a Keyblade to give about a bubble? In 11th, and don't sweat the numbering here, it'll make more sense later, is the Pridelands Gate object, which is the cloud apparition of Mufasa. In absolute fairness, I don't know what else you do for this world, because they're lions, they haven't really gotten super far in the way of having things, but this one is just strange to me. I guess the only other feasible option would be like Rafiki's drawing of Simba in the Stone Hollow. By the way, and I'll do this for each new Cage 2 world, if the Pridelands did have a keyhole, I think it'd have to be somewhere in or on Pride Rock, probably at the very top. Anyway, I feel like Mufasa's image in the clouds should be something only Simba can see, or at least that's the impression I always got in the movie. Does everyone actually see it? I mean, I suppose it's the Keyblade reacting to it, not Sora, and the Keyblade is sort of a magical item, so it might have special privileges here, but I think this ghosty cloud business should stay between father and son. And even still, what does Sora think is triggering the gate here? Just some random clouds in the sky? He must be thinking, man, this is even dumber than the fucking bubble. It's a shame Atlantica and Pridelands are the lowest tier because they're the only two worlds to have unique animations for the ceiling cutscene given Sora's different forms. And it's especially cool in this case because Lion Sora unseals the gate with his tail. Actually, come to think of it, why are we even unsealing gates in these dead-end worlds at all? There's no more gummy routes to open up. Knowing my luck, the Pridelands gate leads to the Treasure Planet world that's just off-screen to the left here. In 10th, and honestly I wouldn't quibble with having this a spot lower, is the Cave of Wonders Jewel from Agrabah. The only reason this isn't last is because it's at least a tangible, unique item, but the bar is in hell. Actually, it's not, because the Olympus one hasn't even shown up yet. It's literally just some random ruby that Abu supposedly steals from the Cave of Wonders, and he's seen running away with it after fighting the lords at the palace gates. The red jewel is from the original Aladdin, which makes it a bit anachronistic that it's here in the adaptation of Return of Jafar, but it also was hardly even that big of a deal in the original movie either. It's at least kind of funny that Donald tries to steal it, because what would a spacefaring duck from a different planet actually even do with a big fucking jewel, but otherwise there's not much going on here. I guess they couldn't make it either of the lamps because Genie and Jafar aren't present for the first visit, but the ruby has almost nothing to do with the overarching story of the world. If the whole plot or lesson for the world was about greed, then maybe there'd be some juice here, but this is basically just a literal throwaway gag. In 9th place, what the fuck do you mean it's Shan Yu's sword? How is this even real? Again, in fairness, there aren't necessarily a ton of super iconic Mulan items, but the firework that kills Shan Yu is certainly more iconic than his sword. I get that the Emperor hands it to her as a trophy and proof of what she did for China, and this happens in the movie too, but I don't know, it's just a bummer that it comes from such a nothing character. If we're doing swords, why not just use Mulan's? She's the one with the growth and is an actual character. Shan Yu hardly passes round 1 of henchman auditions for any other Disney movie, and somehow he's the main villain of this one. Called in a favor, if I had to guess. Now, if we were giving the Land of Dragons a keyhole, I would assume it'd be somewhere in the palace, though if we were pulling from locations not featured in the actual game, I think Mulan's family temple or the Reflection Bridge are also solid contenders. For 8th place, we're going to Port Royal, and if you thought it was a piece of 8, you'd be wrong, because it's actually Jack's compass, which, like, okay. I was floored that it wasn't, you know, the major plot device in this world that dictates the terms of the pirate curse, but maybe they held off on using that since it still features heavily in the second visit. It's not really a bad pick, but I feel like it features a lot more in the movie than this world. It's at least not just a thing, like the compass does have magical properties, but again, they don't really make a meal out of that in KH2. But at least it's not something stupid like Barbossa's hat or something. I think the Port Royal keyhole would basically have to be somewhere on Isla de Muerta. I don't see there being any other real option in this case. In 7th, it's the membership card in Hollow Bastion. I just think it's funny that this mass-printed and, as far as I can see, not even laminated piece of paper is the trigger that gets the Keyblade all inspired. It is legitimately kind of sweet because I'm sure it means a lot to Sora that his friends are including him in their club, so it's an actual token of friendship and thus a better or at least more meaningful gate trigger than a lot of the other shit we've covered. On the other hand, this isn't even a true membership card, it's an honorary membership card. Frankly, after Sora slaughters 1000 plus Heartless, I think this card should, at the very least, get a Sharpie line crossing out the honorary. And like, is this card good for anything besides sentimentality? Does it give you a discount at the vending machines in Ansem's Castle? I'm sure we'll get clarification on this and something that isn't missing Link. Sorry I got that cancelled, by the way. Also, anytime I see HBRC, all my brain can think is Head Bitch Rin Charge, which I guess would be more of a Final Fantasy X thing. Alright, maybe a sleepier one to have up here at number 6, but I'm going with the Olympus Stone. It's entirely invented for the game, and it's not necessarily an object that holds significant meaning to anyone, but I do think it thematically ties into the world story and makes sense as the gate object. The stone's sole function is granting its holder protection against the weakening effects of the underworld, and Herc's whole arc in this game is concerned with the loss and regaining of his strength. Granted, the moral of the story is that true strength doesn't come from your actual muscles or magical plot device objects, so maybe it's not perfect messaging, but it at least makes sense as this world's special object. It's got good branding, it's easy to remember, and it doesn't just show up at the end of the world, it has a presence and some utility throughout the visit. Next up, it might seem silly to have Jack Skellington's Santa outfit at number 5, but I really do think it's a pretty inspired pick for Halloween Town's gate object. Kingdom Hearts 2 is all about duality, even down to its Disney worlds, and the central conflict for Jack in this game is, much like in the Nightmare Before Christmas movie, his role as the Pumpkin King of Halloween versus this new and exciting thing called Christmas. So when the gate objects reference that theme of duality, I like that. Olympus does it a bit with godhood versus mortalhood, and even Pridelands does it with Mufasa representing both Simba's past and his future as king. It's just a shame that it's like not really an object in that case. Technically, as far as just the information we get in the game is concerned, Jack himself could be the gate object. I mean, I can't really tell what's glowing here, can you? Like with the doorknob, I hope this isn't painful for him because he looks much more distressed. In 4th place is the gate object that's probably the easiest to forget by virtue of it not being tied to a traditional, conventional world, but for our purposes here, the sea salt ice cream in the empty void totally counts. This moment is on the heels of my favorite sequence in the game, and frankly a top 3 sequence in the entire series, and it gives our party just a little smackroll of hope after the devastating revelations about the reality of the organization's plot. Not to mention, Riku just straight up DoorDashes this to you before fucking off. I get why he won't reveal himself, he's still in his feelings about giving into the darkness, but I would like to know how he knew to be here at this time. We don't really know what he was up to during the Battle of Hollow Bastion, but this leads me to believe he was just sorta out of frame and watching things unfold the whole time. I actually would have had this a little bit higher if the gate object were the picture instead of the ice cream. I feel like it's so obviously more meaningful if it's the picture, and like, wouldn't they be fucked if the ice cream melted? Unless the magic Keyblade juice is contained within the stick, who's to say? Bronze medal for the gate objects goes to the Cornerstone of Light in Disney Castle. And I think it goes without saying, but the Hall of the Cornerstone would also host the castle's keyhole if it had one. I would like to know how exactly the Cornerstone came to be, if it was constructed or inherited or what, because why does Disney Castle get this magical artifact that wards off evil, but also isn't even that good because Maleficent can just negate that shit? As a gate object, this one's a bit boring and obvious, I suppose, but it just makes sense and again touches on the theme of duality, this time being past and present, and to an extent just light versus darkness as well. Not counting the Mufasa clouds because they're stupid, this is also the physically largest of the gate objects. I have no commentary or quip about that, it's just a fact, because there's not much else to say. I think Donald and Daisy should divorce. In second place, another one that might slip your mind, the Struggle Trophy Crystal from Twilight Town, specifically the blue crystal that belonged to Roxas, because it sure as hell isn't going to be the Pence Crystal. The Pence Crystal would initiate the gate opening ceremony, but it would stop you in the middle of it to ask you trivia questions about how many fucking windows there are in Tram Common. Of course, the gate cutscene happens at Sunset Station, and I think Twilight Town's keyhole would almost certainly have to be here, with an outside chance of the old mansion. The cool thing about the crystal and the trophy in general is that nobody here really has any reason to give a shit about it. Cypher just passes it off to Goofy and he's stuck holding it for the ending cutscene of your brief trip here. None of SDG or HPO, or at least not this HPO, have seen it prior to just now. It was the simulated Twilight Town's version of the trophy that produced the crystals that Roxas and his simulated pals held onto, but this version is entirely separate. And yet Roxas is stirring within Sora, so he and thus the Keyblade react to it, showing that friendship can conquer the trench between data worlds and reality, or some fuzzy bullshit like that. I just think it's really nice. But nothing's nicer than love, so number one is very handily the rose from Beast Castle. This one just checks all of the boxes for me. Iconic and meaningful object from the source material, actually a tangible thing, touches on those duality themes, and extremely easy to remember. When I started listing these gate objects out, this was far and away the most obvious and memorable. The only knock against it is that it's kinda weird how the rose isn't physically present with the whole crew in this cutscene, it's just chilling in the Beast Room the whole time. This would have been a bit less awkward if these gate sequences happened on the second visits, because then the rose would be out on the bridge after the Zaldin fight. Other than that, no notes. And of course, the Beast Castle keyhole would be in this very same area. Can't really think of a better or more iconic place than the ballroom. Okay, for our next mini ranking, let's get even minier. In fact, let's get away from these numbered titles. Who needs them? I know what you want, you sick fuck. You want Rechain of Memories content. Twist my arm, why don't ya? Better yet, twist my grotesque, always front-facing gigantic ears, because we're talking about gimmick cards. As in the Lucky Emblem Mickey head cards, because no one calls them gimmick cards, but that's what these guys officially are. In fairness, there are literal Mickey cards in the Riku campaign, also green, so it does bear differentiating. I'm sure you already know if you've played the game, but for a refresher, gimmick cards are boss fight exclusive cards that plop into the arena when you satisfy certain conditions, and yes, I just learned that it's not entirely random. In most battles that feature gimmick cards, the card can drop at a 30% chance whenever you break the boss's card, with some occasional caveats. Here's the chart from the KH Wiki, aka my fucking Bible. Small aside, and I'm sure most people watching this don't care, but if you ever have the option of a fandom.com wiki or one that isn't that, use the latter, it's basically always better. Anyway, not every boss fight in COM has these cards. Specifically, they don't appear for any organization or Ansem fights, Cloud, Hades, or Captain Hook. I get why they don't show up for the original characters, and I guess Cloud, but I always thought it was weird that Hades and Hook were left out. Maybe coincidentally, those guys are also the only non-original characters who know how to create slites, so I don't know, I guess they're just built different. Gimmick cards all generally do something to help you or hinder the boss, and outside of a potential recom boss ranking, I would have no other outlet to talk about them besides this stupid video, so let's do that. Also, they appear in original Chain of Memories too, and do roughly the same things, but I didn't feel like getting footage for it. Okay, worst gimmick card. In 8th place is pretty easily the Trickmasters. All it does is bring back the table and chair, and of course this only works if the table and chair have already been destroyed. So you've got a gimmick card that doesn't even have a gimmick unless a specific requirement has already been fulfilled, and it's not like you even need the furniture to damage or defeat Trickmaster, otherwise its status wouldn't be tied to the very missable gimmick cards anyway. Not to mention, this does nothing to actually impede Trickmaster's ability to harm you. If anything, you're now at ass-beating height. It's not useless, none of the gimmick cards are bad, like this makes it easier for you to cast spells like Fire and Blizzard, but it's overall the least valuable when stacked up against the other 7 scenarios. In 7th place is Dragon Maleficence, which creates this little floating platform for you to ride on, providing an avenue for a less third-degree Bernie beatdown. It's definitely better than Trickmasters because it protects you from more attacks and you have a greater range of motion, but I'm almost positive I've still managed to die while this effect was active. Maleficent can still attack you freely, so even with this platform, you still have to devote some energy to avoiding her attacks or breaking her cards. 6th place goes to Genie Jafar, and congrats to him for not being dead last for the very first time on the channel. This is the last of the gimmick cards that doesn't incapacitate the boss in some way, but this one is potentially even better than some others because of how consistently you can get this one to appear. I always learn something when making these videos, and this was my most valuable takeaway for this project. If you have Blizzard cards or any other ice-based attacks, you can use it on Genie Jafar's body, and this causes the gimmick card to drop 100% of the time. And the card causes all of the moving platforms to rise up to their peak positions, meaning you just have a big flat surface to chase Iago around on, invalidating the core obstacle of the fight. Now, granted, you still have to chase him around and Jafar can still attack you, hence why this isn't higher, but when armed with this frigid knowledge, you can just cruise through this fight with no problem. Of course, poor Riku has no such luck because he doesn't have access to any Blizzard attacks, so he can only get the gimmick card at a 25% drop rate whenever he breaks Jafar's cards. Sora can get it that way too, but given that you're guaranteed to have a Blizzard card unless you sold it for some reason, this is the way to go. Kind of a similar one in 5th place, we've got the Parasite Cage. This gimmick card also removes the operative feature of the fight, in this case the rotating platforms and the yucky stomach juice, instead giving you stable ground to fight on for 10 seconds. It also takes away 2 of the cage's attacks, but just 2 for some reason, so he can still hurt you during this period. Honestly, you can argue that Genie Jafar deserves to be above this solely for the more manipulable condition to get the card to drop, since Parasite Cage only drops its gimmick card at a 30% chance whenever you break one of its attacks. But this one also protects you from the environmental damage, so I figured it's overall more useful. In 4th place, we're entering a tier where the gimmick card both gives you a leg up and puts the boss at a disadvantage. Darksides fits that bill, and it also has a unique and completely manipulable way to get the card to spawn. And unlike Genie Jafar, this is the only way to get Darkside's gimmick card to drop, as there's no percentage-based drop chance for breaking one of Darkside's attacks. Killing all of the shadows that Darkseid summons with his punch attack results in a guaranteed gimmick card. In this regard, it's actually not nearly as good as Genie Jafar's, since the shadows aren't always available for slaughtering, but this card also makes Darkseid just sort of stand there and do nothing for a whopping 17 seconds. Granted, it also spawns some platforms so you can more easily batter his beautiful face, but you'll also be spending some of those seconds actually climbing those platforms. It's also not the hardest thing in the world to accidentally fall off of the top one, and if that happens, you're pretty much screwed out of getting any more damage in during that cycle. I figure this is probably the easiest gimmick card to completely miss, since the shadows are a little more than a nuisance, and you can totally just ignore them and focus your energy on Darkseid, though it might pay off to go after the small fry, despite what Leon once said. Speaking of, in 3rd place is the Big Fry, the elegant, no-nonsense Guard Armor gimmick card, which causes Guard Armor to enter pile form, and it just lays there for 10 seconds while you wail on it, and I'm not talking Monstro. No bullshit, no half measures, you just get a bowl of Guard Armor soup until he gets his nerve back. It's the first gimmick card and the most simple, but it works. The top 2 gimmick cards not only incapacitate the boss, but also skip past the quote-unquote preliminary phase of each boss battle, aka parts of the fight where you're not able to damage the boss directly. In 2nd place is Oogie's gimmick card, which brings down the gate that separates us from our beloved Bugman. Normally you need to break 3 cards to get the gate to lower a bit with each break. The gimmick card also spawns at a 50% chance if you break one of Oogie's cards and then destroy one of his dice. So this is a gimmick card I would actually recommend hanging on to and not just using immediately, since you're not getting its full value if you use it after the gate's already been lowered once or twice. On top of that, this gimmick stuns Oogie for 13 seconds, so he's unable to even retaliate using his pathetic little slap attack. And the gimmick card I am always most happy to see is Ursula's, because I think her fight is so annoying. Ursula's gimmick card gets rid of all of her tentacles and stupefies her for 8 seconds, and the card has a 25% chance to drop upon destroying any single tentacle. Once again, I recommend saving this card until all of her tentacles are active again so you can get your full mileage out of it. Like with Oogie, this skips the annoying and not hitting the boss part of the fight, which is overall a bigger headache than Oogie's Iron Fence, since you're dealing with 4 tentacles with health bars instead of having to just break 3 cards. And it can be legitimately difficult to take these tentacles out sometimes because Ursula has cards valued at 7 and 8, so she can pretty easily break your shit if you're not careful. So instead, pop this gimmick card and break her face. Alright, we're pretty far into the video, so I think it's break time. In 4th place, Terra. I love Terra, but what are we doing here, bud? Whose first instinct upon taking a break is to do handstand push-ups? A maniac, that's who. Someone who unironically calls Twitter X, or thinks the Legion is the best option for the Mojave in Fallout New Vegas. People who do not belong in polite society. Terra gets a pass because he's ripped and gorgeous unlike those other 2 groups, but I can still be mad at him for misunderstanding the concept of having fun. 3rd place is going to go to Aqua for what's an extremely skillful display. It's giving Luigi leading the Paper Mario Parade, or the flag twirlers straight up dying in SpongeBob. Unfortunately, however, I don't even know which way the Quiznos is. Very rarely does this happen, but Ven beats Terra and Aqua, at least in this specific category. Holy shit, dude, where did he learn how to do this? Did Jesse McCartney dance? I mean, I know he sings, but was he like doing crazy choreo? Is that where this comes from? It's just in Ven's vocal DNA? He must be absolutely shredding his fingertips right now, Jesus Christ. The best part of this is the sobering realization that it's extremely likely that Vanitas is capable of doing this as well. And truly, Terra, Aqua, and Ven walked so Sora could run. There was never a universe where I was gonna rank Sora dabbing anywhere but first. Some people might have you believe that this is immediately disqualifying, that this should be last, and those people are joyless warlocks. And not only was Sora ahead of the curve on dabbing, but he's also got 2 other moves that he can randomly pull out as the conclusion of his break time. 3 breaks for the price of 1. Honestly, it's a stronger trio than TVA themselves. I'm not happy about it, but it's true. Now, did you poor unfortunate hoes think I was gonna do a mini ranking video without doing a mini ranking? What is he talking about? The crowd murmurs. Read the subtitles. Number 5, KH3 Mini. This was not very Women's History Month of them. I don't think she even knew this game was coming out. Word on the street, she thought KH3 got canned in favor of Final Fantasy Versus 13. She gets a whopping 17 seconds of screen time in the ending cutscene, no lines, and what I'm assuming was a big fucking check because she's a queen, she deserves it. Mini number 4 is, tragically, KH1 Mini. While KH3 Mini only clocks in at the end, KH1 Mini is only in 2 cutscenes in the beginning. This Mini only has the role of sending Donald and Goofy to find Mickey and the key, she sees them off, and then she's relegated to being an unturnable model inside Jiminy's journal. But there is the intrigue of the ring. In KH1, Minnie is not wearing a ring, but she is wearing it in BBS and KH2, her 2 appearances that are chronologically before and after KH1. So, once upon a time on Twitter, I joked that this was her wedding ring, and she's not wearing it in KH1 because her and Mickey are going through a separation, because she's upset with him fucking around in the Realm of Darkness. Well, people were so kind to point out that, that's not her wedding ring, it's on the wrong hand. Like, I'm just getting absolutely cooked for this. Because yeah, I'm the bad guy around these parts. I'm the straight bro-y menace in the community who doesn't pick up on small details. Well, here's a detail, folks. She's a fake mouse who isn't real. So be so fucking serious for a millisecond if you could. A minisecond even. This was like 3 years ago, still pissed. Mini 3 is Dream Drop Mini, and you could argue that this entry could be separated because we're actually dealing with 2 minis here, Modern Disney Castle Mini and French Country of the Musketeers Mini, with that weird hair thing that fittingly wigs me out. She mostly serves a damsel role in the latter, getting shoved into chests and kidnapped by the Beagle bastards, but she gets to put on her ass-kicking heels in the modern day. Pete tries to smother her with his disgusting hands that you just know have not been washed this decade, and with the assist from Lee, Minnie manages to escape by casting a super clutch faith spell. It seems to cause damage to Pete and minor annoyance to Maleficent, mini annoyance even. Queen Minnie II would have to be Birth by Sleep Minnie, where she's pretty much the acting mayor or governess of Disney Town. Or I guess queen would be the word, come to think of it. She gets potentially more screen time here than anywhere else, if only by virtue of hitting a lot of the same beats with her through all 3 campaigns. Of course, she's in charge of the Million Dreams Awards, which mainly amounts to handing out custom-made ice creams to whoever happens to win, but it's also possible she counts the votes. AKA, she threw out all of the legitimate votes for Captain's Justice and/or Dark, and then sent Pete directly to hell when he tried to hashtag Stop the Steal. Make no mistake, don't let the colorful decor and upbeat music confuse you, this is an absolute monarchy. There is no council, no vote to hold, or litigation to be pursued. This is a unilateral decision to imprison someone in the shadow dimension. Normally, I would say this is a bad thing, but when the sentence is being carried out by very slow-moving brooms, I think it veers into funny as fuck territory. And unsurprisingly, KH2 snatches a W with its iteration of Minnie. This is the first time in a series she really gets to do anything, and by way of being a pseudo-party member at that. Granted, you have to protect her from bolt towers and minute bombs trying to Antoinette her, but she's not helpless like a handful of other escort characters. Looking at you, tied-up Meg. She's got her little light ball thing, which I always think she's yelling flawn while casting, but also the aforementioned Faith when she combines her powers with Sora. Mind you, she had no idea what the Heartless were until, like, literally this moment, and she's like, "Oh wow, so that's what they are! Anyway, let's kill them!" That's my Minnie voice, I guess. It's hard to think of Minnie ever getting much more to do than this, unless they decide to make Kingdom Hearts woke and partner Kairi up with Minnie and Daisy on their own side game adventure. That was a joke, by the way, these games are already extremely gay. Happy Pride, this was the Pride special, I guess. Hades is trans. Hey folks, thanks for watching. I'm small in this one because it's a mini ranking video. I don't know, this is what we've got, okay? This is what we have. Like I said at the beginning of the video, let me know what you thought of the format. This is a type of video I've been meaning to do for like 2 years now, and I finally like came up with the group of things I wanted to throw in here. If you did like it, pitch other things that I could potentially talk about in this format. I'm not like married to it being the very next thing or even something that I do for the rest of the year, but if you like it, let me know. And if you didn't, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. I just wanted to try this at least once just to see if it was like a viable style. There were a couple permutations of this video where there were different topics and they were in different orders, and this was the one I settled on. I know like the first two were kind of bigger and then they got a little more granular, but I wanted to start with the big one, but then it would have felt weird to go Keyblades and then the other stuff and then to go to the KH2 thing. So it's a little weirdly ordered, but hopefully it was okay. And I just wanted to thank you for your continued support. I'm still having so much fun making these videos. I don't know what a drought is. Never heard of that. Don't say that dirty D word around me. I don't know what that is. We're fine. Consider liking and subscribing if you're new, or like it if you've been here as well. And also, if you really like the video, consider checking out patreon.com/regularpat. A couple bucks a month goes a long way, helps me do this full time, and you get some neat benefits from this dude. That's all from me. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, evening, whenever you watch this, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.